Hi, and welcome to Argus's Global LPG Conversations podcast, our regular update on the LPG markets and indeed Argus's offering to the LPG markets. My name is Peter Wilton. I'm editor of the International LPG Report based out of London. And joining me today is David Appleton, Vice President Business Development for LPG across Europe, Middle East and Africa. And David's here to answer a few questions on some new prices we're launching currently for Poland and Ukraine. So David, just to kick off, hi for starters.
Hi Peter,
how you doing?
How are you today?
Yeah, we're all good. Just to get going here, I guess first it's instructive for you to give us sort of a simple introduction as to what exactly we are assessing here.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Pete. It's interesting. We're reversing our roles because normally I'm the one asking the questions. You're the one telling everybody about the market. So I'll do my best to be the one answering the questions today. So basically, we have two new prices launching in Eastern Europe. The first one is FCA FOT Polish ports price. So that's basically for the loading of trucks and rail cars at Gdansk, Gdynia, and Szczecin. So that's kind of from basically on the border of the Baltic. And then the second one is a Ukraine border price, and Argus used to assess the eastern border of Ukraine with Russia, which obviously with the invasion and the war and so forth has been suspended. So we've now effectively taken the other side of Ukraine with the EU borders, specifically Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia. And that one is for railcar trade at the border at basically any railcar location for LPG. And just to note that the Poland prices for propane and the Ukraine prices are propane butane mix. So yeah, that's what we've launched in the past week.
Okay, so on the Ukraine border prices, you mentioned Hungary, Poland, Slovakia. I think if my geography is correct, that leaves out Ukraine's border with Romania. Is there any reason that doesn't enter, our calculations here?
Yeah, firstly, well done on your geography there, Peter. That's correct. The reason for that is because now things are changing quite rapidly in terms of the market in that region and the trade flows and so forth. As we see it, when we've been assessing this prior to launching, so whenever we launch a new price, we do 2 to 3 months of effectively ghosting what's happening on the market. We saw some divergence with the Romania prices, which is due to the fact that Romania tends to, in terms of its origin price on a Sonatrach contract price or posted price basis, whereas the other countries there are much more connected in terms of the origin to the CIF-ARA markets and basically Northwest Europe. So there is a bit of a difference with Romania, which would make the assessment potentially a little bit tricky to really pin down. So we've gone with Hungary, Slovakia, and Poland for now as a starting point. Now, obviously, with the situation in Ukraine and with the war in Russia, we are seeing trade flows change into Europe and product move in different directions and people source from different places. So there is the possibility of going forward that we will adjust this methodology or potentially launch another price. So we obviously keep a very close eye on the trade into Ukraine. And if at some point we believe there will be liquidity to either expand that assessment because we can make it work in terms of having the additional location or indeed do a separate assessment, then we will look at that later in the year or possibly early into next year. But that's where we are at the moment, is to have those 3 borders.
Right, sure. And you've touched on it a couple of times. The reason we're doing this is in response to changing trade flows into and around Europe following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So that's clear. But just how severely have you seen trade flows change? with these guys. Used to look east and now looking west and west for product.
It's a really good question. So along with suspending the eastern border DAF Ukraine price, the other price that we have discontinued is actually a flow which would effectively be Ukraine into Romania. So you can see how prior to the current situation, we would have Russian LPG going to Ukraine, and some of that being re-exported out westward. And obviously, with that border on the east completely blocked due to the war, the Ukrainian market now has to get everything from the west. And so what we're seeing is something that basically didn't happen prior to the war become quite a liquid market. We're seeing in the ghosting assessment, we're seeing deals happen multiple times per week. We're seeing a lot of bids and offers, and also a lot of different players involved in the market. So it's been really interesting to see that emerge as a response to the need to get that product in there. And it's really been drawn to our attention by the Ukrainian market, who have come to us to ask us to get involved in this and this new flow, and basically make sure we can price it, because ultimately the lack of transparency at that border is potentially problematic for those guys who are trying to get that product into the Ukrainian market, where it's auto gas there is, I think, well over 1 million tons per year. So they really do need to find an alternative to get hold of that product. Just briefly on Poland, and actually mentioning in particular the situation on the eastern border. Now, LPG is not sanctioned into the European Union. However, we have seen a lot of complications in terms of the flow and the issues with logistics of rail tank cars going through Belarus and so forth. So the product still is moving, and however, there's been much more of a pull on those Polish terminals, particularly Gdansk, and I think that's going to continue during the winter. So there is interest in having an understanding about what the price is out the back of those terminals onto the truck and the rail tank car market as well.
Yeah, understood. So, I mean, clearly on Ukraine's eastern border, for obvious reasons, there's no functioning market there, whatsoever. But on Poland's eastern border, as you just briefly alluded to there, Argus have a benchmark LPG assessment there at Brest on its eastern border with Belarus. Is this price still running? Is there still a functioning market there?
Yeah, so there is still enough liquidity to assess that market, so we are continuing to do so. It has reduced somewhat since February, as you would expect. And we have seen, and we've reported on a number of players in Poland who are now actively self-sanctioning and have made that decision not to take Russian LPG, which is a corporate decision from some of those. But at the same time, we do still see product flowing into the country, which again is understandable in the sense that the Polish market has traditionally been reliant on that product from the east. And we're actually talking about this at a time when, because of other factors, not necessarily directly related to LPG, but things like the price of natural gas is reducing the amount of refinery availability as well, meaning that there is quite a short into Poland. That's something that I think, if I can briefly put a forecasting hat on here, is likely to cause some higher prices going into the winter, which I think we've discussed recently on a podcast previously.
Sure. Yeah, well, that makes complete sense. I guess finally, just to wrap up, I've got to ask, when are we launching these?
So 12th of October, which is actually, we are recording today so it's today, but I don't know when our listeners will be actually listening to this. So by the time it goes out, it should have been launched. Both of these prices are available in Argus International LPG. So our subscribers will be able to see those in the Eastern Europe table. And if anyone has any questions you've listened to this, then don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to answer any further questions.
Okay, great. Well, I think that covers all we were trying to sort of get out today, David. I don't know if you have any further additional comments to make.
No more. Thanks, Pete.
No problem. So I guess that draws a line under it. We've introduced our new prices and explained as to why we are launching these, and giving greater transparency to what is a new and emerging market. Of course, suits all parties, so it's been quite well supported, as David mentioned. And perhaps down the line we can revisit this topic in a podcast, maybe 6 months or so down the line, see how spot liquidity is looking then, and indeed what the prices have been doing.
Sure.
On launch, and also sort of give an update on the wider Eastern European market, which is of course in quite a state of flux.
Brilliant. Sounds good. Thanks very much, Pete.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Thank you, David. You too.